Shavua Tov and Gedvach. I was asked by the Lakewood Scoop to explain what happened on Friday with the NAR, the National Association of Realtors, settlement for $400 million and how that affect everybody. I'm sorry for reporting this so late and doing this video, just that I was away for Shabbos and I had to speak to different brokers I wanted to speak to first to get the perspective on all different sides of the coin. So this way, when I'm sharing this information, I'll be able to sprinkle in different perspectives as well. So the real change, to read up, you go read up on it. The National Association of Realtors, read up what you want, what the history is, was it justified, was there a problem, was this the fix to the problem? Let's talk about really what changed. Up until now, when someone was selling a home, they went to a real estate broker, let's call them a listing agent. And they went to the listing agent and they typically paid somewhere between a 4%, if the price of the house is very high, up to 6%. And that's what they'd agreed to pay. The listing broker would then post that house on the MLS, multiple listing service, or the Zillows of the world, and then they would post how much of their commission they were willing to share. And then a buyer's broker would be, or a buyer direct would, most cases a buyer's broker would go online on behalf of their buyers and try to find the property for them, and then they'll know how much they're going to get paid. So ultimately, who paid the buyer's broker was paid by the seller through the listing broker. Now, not necessarily did it have to be a 50-50 split. It could have been that the listing broker was getting a 6% commission and only promising 2%. Sometimes they were they were getting a 6% and splitting it. And then the allocation of work was between the two of them. Today, what's changed going forward is that in theory that could happen, but they're not allowed to post how much they're selling, how much they're paying the buyer's broker. The listing agent can't post it anymore. But more importantly, and I see this every time there's a change, the real fundamental change is that when a seller's negotiating with a listing broker, the conversation is no longer, what if I have to pay the buyer? No, it's clear. The seller pays the selling broker, the listing broker, and the buyers pay the buyer's broker. You have to realize, this is how it works in Israel, for example, and in many countries. The seller pays the seller and has the selling broker, and the selling broker has the listing broker, who's the selling broker, has the best interest of the seller in mind. And the buyer's broker gets paid by the buyer, and they have their best interest in mind. So the biggest fear and change is just change right now. How is this going to work? Who's going to benefit from it? So I just want to put through a few different sides of the spectrum of where the industry thinks it's going to be a pro and a con. Clearly, to the seller, it's probably going to be a win, because right off the bat, their starting point is not going to be, let's go with 5% average. They're not going to be talking about paying 5%, they're paying 2.5%. So if you take a home, the industry calls an average home $400,000. Let's, for the purpose here, use $1 million home if you want to say on a higher end. That's a $20,000 fee or $25,000 fee as opposed to a $40,000 or $50,000 fee. So right off the bat, the seller is going to save. Number one. Number two is that the listing broker, in theory, if you were a listing broker that was just like sitting back, getting a listing, and then posting the MLS and make the buyer's broker do all the work and paying, and you were greedy, that person's losing out the most. That for sure is an issue. But if you're a very good listing broker, then you're really fine. You should be able to make the same kind of money. Some people think become a listing broker is the key going forward. It's much easier, just knock it out, get those listings, and you make the money. There are other people saying no. If there's going to be now a discussion about with a listing broker negotiating to get the listing, there's going to be a lot more room for the industry to change, because people are going to say, what exactly am I paying you for? To post them in the MLS? I could post them myself. What am I going to pay you for? You're not the one bringing the buyer. There's a buyer's broker bringing the buyer. You're going to just negotiate on my behalf? I should pay you a different type of fee. So some people think that's going to happen that way, and other people think no, it's going to stay easy at 2.5% and everyone's going to be fine. This is pure speculation, and it's very important for those of you that know me from my G-Parency business. I'm a commercial mortgage broker, so I deal on the commercial side, so I appreciate the commercial sales side and the commercial finance side. I'm a huge fan of paying a real estate broker to sell a building, sell a home. Because the broker created the value from scratch. They created a price. They created a negotiation to create the right buyer. It's only in the mortgage case where I believe there's a value to a broker, but potentially that value should be capped. There should be a number, a fixed number you pay a broker. So going back here on listing broker, that's the big debate. Who's going to benefit as far as the listing broker? Is it good for listing broker? Is it bad? If you are a broker now, should you focus on being a listing broker, or better yet, be a buyer's broker? The negative and the positive of the buyer's broker, where I think, again, the consumer, the buyer is going to win, is now you're going to have brokers come to a buyer and really negotiate with them and explain to them the value they're bringing to the table. Because the buyer's paying. So they're going to turn to the buyer and say, listen, you're going to have to pay me. And let me tell you why you should pay me. And let me tell you what I'm going to do for you. So you're going to see much more competition, which is a win for the consumer, the buyer. Is this good for a broker? Would a broker have to work harder? Probably yes. But you know what I realized? In all my research, even now when the lawsuit first started and speaking about it over the last few years, it was always the good brokers always felt that certain brokers are able to squeeze their way in, do nothing, and make money. But a good quality broker will always make money. So yes, are there going to be many brokers leaving the industry because they can't make money in this new world? It's a tougher world to make money in, without a doubt. But those that are going to stay in this industry, I think, are going to thrive. But here's the big talk that's talking about as far as the buy side. Should you take a buyer's broker? Who's going to benefit? So some people say the more affluent people appreciate it and they'll pay the buyer's broker. The more affluent people are more knowledgeable. They know how to negotiate. They don't even need a broker potentially, but they won't lose out. Who's going to lose out? The first-time home buyer, the person who knows nothing, the person who knows nothing about real estate and business and negotiation and what's going to happen on a property. They'll lose out because in many cases the first-time home buyer is scraping together their 3 to 5% down payment. You have to tell them to put another 3% on top. So I happen to think that that's not the case. I believe that's what's going to end up happening is become industry standard, and people know a buyer pays and a seller pays. And I believe that the banks, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, or all lenders will end up adjusting. They will allow the buyer's commission to be able to put in. So let's use an example so I could explain it. What they're trying to explain, which is a negative to first-time buyers, is an issue as follows. Let's take the house of a $400,000 house. Let's take the commission of a 6% commission. So until now, there was a $400,000 house where the seller would pay $24,000, 6% will pay, the seller pay to the listing broker, and the listing broker will split that $24,000, $12,000 to themselves, and potentially $12,000 to the buyer's broker. The buyer, bottom line, got a mortgage, let's say it was 95%, got a 95% mortgage of the $400,000, everything is great. Keeping the numbers round. Now the fair is, what's going to happen is that the seller is only paying 12%. So in this $400,000 house, potentially, this house now is going to go sell. Potentially, there's a big debate. Is it still going to sell for $400,000? Well, now it's sell for $388. Let's say you want to go with the assumption it's going to go for $388. Now, the buyer is going to have to buy this house and come up with another $12,000. I think what's going to happen is that the buyer is going to be able to put into the closing costs that they have a closing cost of $12,000. Banks are going to allow it to be the same $400,000. They'll get 95% of $400,000. All this is speculative. How it's going to finally shake out. History has always shown when there's clarity, transparency, the consumer always wins. So I believe net overall, the consumers are going to win. The top tier brokers are going to be fine and maybe even thrive because they feel it's going to shake out. In general, our brokers net can be making less money on a per transaction basis. Yes, and they can't have dual agency. I think it's going to be tougher. It's a whole new law. They can't get paid on both sides. The loophole till now is that the seller was paying and they could split the commission. Over here now, it's very clear that there's a buy side and there's a sell side, and the buyer's paying and the seller's paying. So how's that law going to shake out? I do not know. But at least you have the broader picture. I hope this was clear, and I hope that it only came out in a positive light. I'm an internal optimist. See every cup half full, and God willing that whatever side of this coin you're on, you will net be able to make the money that you're making and you're supposed to make. God runs the world, and you have to do your status, you have to do your inputs, and he'll take care of the outputs. Best of luck. I'll update more as this becomes a little clearer. The settlement was done. It's supposed to take effect sometime in July. Have a wonderful week and best of luck.